From the distant past, when the universe was still in a state of chaos, the world was divided into two halves, the East and the West. Guided by dragon messengers, humanity lived in prosperity, but they were always curious about what lay beyond. A few years later, the Western Star was the first to obtain the dragon's breath, a power of immense magnitude. Meanwhile, the Eastern Star remained fragmented into numerous nations, one of which was the Oda clan. This clan had overcome the chaotic period despite being surrounded by powerful nations. The young woman, Nabu, woke up from a nightmare, haunted by a voice calling her by a name she didn't recognize. Her friend, Mitsu, roused her from sleep in the Nabu forest. Mitsu, both Nabu's friend and subordinate, was constantly reminding her about inheriting the Oda clan due to her poverty and penchant for wandering. Just as Mitsu's nagging continued, a guerrilla arrived with news. An army was preparing for something sinister. Nabu decided that skipping her brother's coming-of-age ceremony was a reasonable choice and followed the army, much to her father's fury. Upon discovering the army preparing for an attack, Nabu reasoned that they were only testing new technology and not launching an invasion. She rushed to her clan's fortress and urged everyone to evacuate, believing their firepower was too powerful for the fortress to withstand a single sweep. However, the commander dismissed her as a fool, ignoring her plea. Suddenly, a massive cannon fired directly at the fortress. Meanwhile, a young woman named Jean, who had been having strange dreams, was ostracized by her village because of her blonde hair. She was treated as a monster, leading her to seek solace in the mountains. However, a loud horn startled her. The hornblower, Vinsai, introduced himself as King Arthur's servant. Instead of pleasantries, he pulled out a deck of cards. Understanding his intent, Jean drew a card. After examining it, Vinsai stated it symbolized the spiritual strength of the world. He claimed to know all about her recent events and the man in her dreams. This man, he said, would become the king who unified the world, and she was the bridge to help him achieve his goal. Nabu witnessed her soldiers being decimated by robots, driven to madness. Meanwhile, Vinsai and Jean boarded a ship bound for the Eastern Star. Jean, guided by an undeniable prophecy, decided to go. Vinsai, despite the risk of incurring King Arthur's wrath, followed her. They hijacked the ship after knocking out the guard. The commander, noticing his stolen ship, ordered it to be shot down, damaging the engine and causing it to crash onto the Earth's surface. On the battlefield, Nabu saw his soldiers fall and could only cry and laugh, lamenting, "Is this war? We can't defeat them with bare hands." Suddenly, a star fell from the sky, visible to everyone. Would it bring good fortune or misfortune? After gathering the fallen soldiers' bodies, Nabu concluded that as long as war raged, humanity could not live peacefully. He and his two friends swore to usher in a new era, using the falling star as a witness. However, upon closer inspection, it wasn't a star, but a vessel plummeting towards the mountain. Nabu and his companions rushed towards the mountain to investigate. It turned out to be a ship from the west. Without hesitation, Nabu entered to see what was inside. He found Jean unconscious and carried her out, only to encounter a robot in the ship. Without a second thought, he jumped into the machine. At that moment, an army attacked the spaceship. Nabu was about to activate the machine when a voice resonated directly in his mind, declaring that only the king could control this robot. Nabu didn't care. From now on, this machine would be his flesh and blood. However, the ship was under constant attack by robots. Nabu activated the machine, bringing it to life. Jean awoke, convinced that this was the savior she had dreamt of. After a while, the machine fully awakened, radiating an overwhelming power that signaled the emergence of a new king. Nabu struggled to control the machine, finding it incredibly difficult. The voice in his head reappeared, guiding him to use the machine by feeling it from within, merging with the armor. Jean woke up and demanded that he release her. Nabu, irritated, told her to stay aside. Finally, he began to sense the armor, adapting and easily decimating the attacking robots. Jean declared that he was the person she needed to meet on the Eastern Star. Suddenly, the machine shut down. Nabu climbed out. His two friends rushed towards him, expressing their relief that he was safe after worrying about him all day. Jean emerged, putting both friends on edge due to her being from the West. However, seeing her as a source of delicious food, they quickly let their guard down. Suddenly, Vinsai appeared, greeting everyone with a loud horn blast, much to Nabu's annoyance. He covered the horn before Vinsai introduced himself, declaring this as his latest masterpiece, specifically created for the King of the Eastern Star. Concerned, he asked Jean if Nabu was indeed the king, but she couldn't be certain. Vinsai asked her to closely observe Nabu to uncover the truth. After this brief exchange, the group decided to retreat to the city to escape their pursuers. In the Round Table, the highest governing body in the Western Star, the captain reported Vinsai's betrayal, stating that he had acquired vital information on Western civilization's military and must be apprehended before it was too late. Caesar, brimming with confidence, volunteered for the mission, promising not to disappoint King Arthur. Back on the Eastern Star, the group used a ship to return to the city. Nabu was annoyed, forced to return to attend his brother's coming-of-age ceremony, something he couldn't stand because of the endless nagging from the officials. The gorilla was busy inspecting Jean's body, which made her furious, resulting in a punch from her. Bored, the gorilla went to the cockpit, only to find his companions missing. Vinsai informed him that Nabu had gone outside and Mitsu was inspecting the armor. Mitsu, fascinated by Vinsai's ship, asked for flying lessons. Jean was lost in thought about her family, playing with horses for a moment. Nabu walked over and asked Jean directly why she came to the Eastern Star. Jean replied that she was there to find her destiny, which Nabu found ridiculous. He argued that anyone chasing destiny without knowing their true pursuit was foolish. However, Jean insisted it was the only way to save her star. As they were talking, Nabu remembered that he hadn't named the armor yet. He asked Jean what they called a fool in the West, and she replied, "The Fool." He loved the name and decided to call his armor that. Mitsu approached, warning him that this armor was beyond their civilization, and choosing the wrong path could turn the area into hell. Nabu, undeterred, declared that if that happened, he would become the Demon King. Just as they were chatting, Vinsai arrived and gifted Nabu a watch and his own armor as a gesture of friendship. Vinsai promised to support Nabu to the fullest, but in return, he wanted to know the truth about the Eastern Star. Without hesitation, Nabu agreed. Mitsu, however, protested, arguing that collaborating with the West would drive Nabu's father and the officials crazy. But Nabu didn't care about those old geezers and demanded that Jean disguise herself as a boy to avoid suspicion, as women on the battlefield were considered a disgrace in their society. Back in the city, his brother's coming-of-age ceremony had begun. Nabu burst into the celebration, informing his father that their third fortress had fallen, blaming the entire incident on the Keda's treachery. He explained that they had unleashed robots to sweep the entire fortress. He didn't forget to gift his brother a watch as a congratulatory present for his ceremony. Nabu then boldly declared that with their current military strength, they couldn't defeat the enemy. This caused the officials to denounce him, but he simply ignored them. Nabu then revealed the key to turning the tide of the battle, a powerful armor, sending shockwaves through everyone, including his father. At that moment, his cousin approached to greet him, leading Jean to inquire about their relationship. Vinsai swiftly pulled out a card, revealing it was the card symbolizing lovers. News of Nabu's newly acquired, devastating armor reached the Keda clan's stronghold. While their general acknowledged the power, he remained arrogant, declaring this the perfect opportunity to test the Oda clan's strength, as the Keda had acquired an equally powerful armor. He immediately ordered his troops to prepare for an attack. The Oda clan, in turn, convened a strategy meeting. Mitsu proposed a plan to bring Vinsai in as their strategist. He argued that with his knowledge and skills, he could greatly benefit the clan and defeat the Keda. However, all the officials found the idea of a Westerner as their strategist a disgrace to the clan and demanded he leave immediately. Meanwhile, Jean struggled to dress as a boy, trying to achieve the most convincing look. Seeing Nabu gazing at the clouds, she reminded him they were supposed to be strategizing for the upcoming war. Nabu, however, dismissed the meeting, stating that those old fools wouldn't be of any help. He'd rather be gazing at the sky. Mitsu's proposal to the clan leader was rejected. The leader believed it was too early to embrace Western knowledge, Mitsu argued that if the Keda attacked, they would be defeated, but the officials, enraged by his audacity, dismissed his concerns, claiming their military strength was sufficient to deter the enemy and no reforms were needed. Mitsu was effectively sidelined. A ship was seen departing, heading towards the Oda clan, its intentions unknown. Jin and Nabu were walking in the hallway when they ran into Mitsu. Nabu apologized to his friend for putting him in a difficult position. Jin felt Nabu acted like a child for not fighting for his beliefs. Nabu replied that he couldn't become a ruler without overcoming these small hurdles, then left. Nabu's younger brother arrived, asking Jin to go archery with him to pass the time. He continually expressed his respect for his brother, seeing him as someone strong and fearless, while feeling weak and hiding in his brother's shadow. He kneeled, seeking his brother's protection and guidance. On the battlefield, enemy troops approached the stronghold. Nabu was discussing the armor's strength with Vinsai when Mitsu arrived, urgently informing them that the enemy was advancing. Nabu was about to test the armor when Vinsai stopped him, saying it was still under adjustment and couldn't be activated. Unable to ignore the situation, Nabu grabbed a bow and arrow and charged towards the battlefield. Without hesitation, he aimed for the robot's cockpit, where the human operator was located, knowing that capturing them would disable the robot. He relentlessly fired, bringing down numerous robots and boosting the morale of the Oda soldiers. As he ran out of arrows, Jin thankfully arrived with a fresh supply. With the soldiers' spirits high, Nabu joined the fray. However, the enemy forces were too numerous, and their advance was unstoppable. Fortunately, Vinsai arrived with the armor. Nabu jumped in, activated the machine, and performed some basic moves, easily scattering the officials. Jin felt an ominous premonition and asked Vinsai to draw a card. She drew a card signifying approaching disaster. The Keda general appeared in his ultimate armor, demanding a one-on-one duel. Nabu saw it as an insult, but the general saw it as a display of the overwhelming power difference between them. Angered, Nabu rushed into close combat, but the other armor awakened its fire-based powers, forcing Nabu to defend himself. Jin, witnessing houses burning, rushed to help the civilians. Meanwhile, the strange ship observed the duel between the two armors. The ship's commander ordered an immediate approach to the battlefield and created a rain shower to ease the heat of the conflict. While Nabu was on the ground, enduring the relentless assault from the general, he heard Jin's desperate cries for help. Without hesitation, he kicked the general away and rushed to her aid, carrying her to the cockpit. Jin, impressed by his bravery, declared that Nabu was destined to be the future king. The general, seeing Nabu's retreat as cowardly, taunted him. Nabu, refusing to accept defeat, channeled his inner strength and awakened the latent power within his armor. The sky darkened, thunder roared, and a fierce downpour began. Vinsai declared it a sign of Nabu's awakened power. Suddenly, the rain stopped, and Queen Himiko, aboard her flying vessel, descended from the heavens. She offered Nabu a pact, immense power in exchange for accepting her terms. Without hesitation, Nabu agreed. Himiko then added that Nabu and the Oda clan would be bound to an alliance with the Yamatai clan. This seemed manageable to Nabu until Himiko's final condition: he must marry her. With a grimace, Nabu accepted. The pact sealed, Nabu's armor underwent a complete transformation, giving birth to a new king, one whose power shook the heavens and the earth. From the skies, Caesar and his allies watched in astonishment, murmuring about the might of the Eastern power. On the battlefield, Nabu, fully empowered, unleashed a series of awe-inspiring strikes, forcing the general to kneel. Yet, the general's strength remained undiminished. He launched a furious attack, challenging Nabu to a fierce battle. Despite wielding the power of lightning, Nabu found himself outmatched by the general. He managed to cleave off a portion of the general's armor before his own machine overloaded and crashed. The general, seeing Nabu down, prepared to finish him off, but his own machine began to overload, prompting him to order a retreat. Everyone boarded the queen's ship and returned to the city. During a meeting, Mitsu informed everyone of the pact between Nabu and Queen Himiko. He believed the upcoming marriage would bring benefits to the clan. However, the council remained wary, arguing for increased defenses and a peaceful approach with neighboring nations. Nabu, suddenly appearing, called the council members cowards, declaring that he would use his war armor and the power of the Yamatai clan to dominate them. The elder, enraged by Nabu's brashness, pointed out that a single war armor was no match for thousands of robots and insisted on bolstering their defenses until reinforcements arrived. As the verbal duel escalated, the elder proposed a compromise, a betrothal ceremony in lieu of a wedding to ease tensions. The council, with a hint of mischief in their eyes, agreed. Himiko, furious about the change from wedding to betrothal, stormed into Nabu's room. Seeing him engaging in a training session with Jean, she decided to personally assess whether Nabu truly was the future king. Nabu, exasperated by her constant questioning, demanded that she cut through her doubts with her sword. Himiko intervened, and upon seeing Jean, realized she was a girl. The two women launched into a heated argument. Nabu, finding their conversation absurd, left the room in disgust. Meanwhile, the elder convened a meeting with the engineers to discuss upgrading the war armor to a higher level. Mitsu questioned Vinsai if anyone other than Nabu could control the armor. The elder assured him that this was impossible, as no one in the West possessed the skills needed. He then suggested Mitsu draw a card from a deck. The card he drew was the Reversed Priestess, meaning that a powerful force would be unleashed once all the necessary elements were in place. Jean, unable to sleep, decided to take a walk for some fresh air and stumbled upon Nabu's sister, who was humming a tune. The sister encouraged Jean to confide her thoughts about her brother, leading to a passionate outburst from Jean. She accused Nabu of being selfish, arrogant, violent, and foolish. Nobu's sister simply smiled, telling Jean that she would eventually come to understand her brother's true nature. The betrothal ceremony took place the next day, attended by the citizens and the council. The mischievous monkey, always on the lookout for profit, found a way to capitalize on the event. Nabu's sister, Ikiheim, opened the ceremony with a beautiful song. Then, the grand entrance came, Nabu, resplendent in his armor, and Queen Himiko. They ascended the war armor, ready to perform the betrothal ritual. Himiko expected a kiss, but Nabu instead lifted her into the air, spinning her like he used to when they were children. Despite the lack of a kiss, Himiko felt a surge of happiness. The ceremony concluded with a giant cake being sliced. Nabu and Himiko, with a powerful gesture, used their swords to split the cake in half, demonstrating the strength of the new era. The invisible pressure of the new dynasty was felt by all. The Western army arrived at the Oda clan's territory, their eyes gleaming with greed at the sight of the fertile land. Caesar, however, was more interested in ogling the local women, much to everyone's annoyance. Meanwhile, Nobu was scolded by the elder for his overconfidence in the war armor and was told to think more critically about his leadership potential. Exasperated by the reprimand, Nabu stormed out. Jean, attempting to write calligraphy, was distracted by Nabu's forced marriage to Himiko. She struggled to focus, ruining several sheets of paper. Nabu, meanwhile, was busy in the workshop, upgrading the war armor. He wanted to make it even stronger. Himiko, luxuriating in a bath, lamented that Nabu was obsessed with his armor and paid no attention to her. She was wallowing in self-pity when Ikiheim arrived, bearing a message from Nabu that caused Himiko to blush with excitement. When she emerged, however, Himiko was crestfallen to find Nabu missing. Ikiheim, cutting to the chase, revealed that Nabu wanted to learn how to control the power granted by the queen, so he could face the invading army. Himiko refused to teach Ikiheim, insisting that she would instruct her fiancé herself, as it was her duty as his wife. Following Ikiheim's instructions, Nabu offered his blood to the gem, granting him full control over the queen's power. Meanwhile, Jean and the elder were enjoying a relaxing moment in the breeze when Vinsai urged Jean to draw a card to predict the future. She drew the reverse tower card, symbolizing an ominous sign. Jean worried about Nabu, wondering if he was destined to be a savior or a destroyer. Only time would tell. Mitsu, having overheard the entire conversation, remained silent, his intentions unclear. As the sun set, Nabu ordered a full-scale attack on the enemy forces. He took a celebratory drink before mounting his armor, but the elder tried to stop him. Nabu ignored the elder's warnings and attempted to climb onto the war armor, but he suddenly collapsed. After investigating, everyone realized that Nabu had been poisoned by the drink. At that moment, a messenger reported that the enemy had breached the city walls. Mitsu, furious, unleashed a verbal tirade at the council, silencing them completely. The situation was dire. The Oda clan's leader decided to engage the enemy to buy Nabu time. He instructed Ikiheim to put Nabu in charge of the Oda clan if he perished. The battle commenced. General Nobuhide Oda, the leader's father, punched an enemy soldier as a show of force. The elder challenged Taiga, the enemy leader, to a one-on-one duel. Shinjen, Taiga's son, readily accepted the challenge. Meanwhile, Nabu, having awakened, discovered that Mitsu had poisoned him, a ploy to intimidate the council and solidify his leadership. The father, unable to withstand the heat of battle, was on the verge of defeat. But Nabu, aboard his war armor, intervened, slicing through 2 enemy soldiers to protect his father. Shinjen, sensing an opportunity, unleashed his full power against Nabu. As they battled, Jin felt something amiss. Vinsai, using his binoculars, noticed a magnificent armor emerging from the sea and joining the fight. "I am Caesar," declared the newcomer, one of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, here to aid the Taiga clan. Caesar then fired a blast of energy at Nabu, who barely managed to dodge. However, Caesar became distracted by the thought of women and decided to steal Nabu's bride. Nabu wanted to chase after Caesar, but Shinjen stopped him. Caesar approached Himiko, and the elder, in a desperate attempt to protect his granddaughter, engaged him. He was quickly defeated and fell to the ground. Nabu, seeing his father fall, went mad with rage. He commanded his armor to unleash its dragon form and began to wreak havoc on the enemy. The general and Caesar retreated. Caesar, dejected, apologized to the gods for his failure to steal the bride and retreated. Nabu, consumed by anger, became increasingly erratic. After the dust settled, the elder, before departing, bestowed upon Nabu the leadership of the Oda clan. He acknowledged that Nabu possessed the strongest leadership qualities and declared his faith in Nobu's ability to lift the Oda clan from the mire. With a final farewell, he departed. Nabu, vowing to avenge his father's downfall, swore to the heavens that he would exact retribution. The Oda clan was in a state of crisis following the loss of their leader. The neighboring lords were circling, sensing an opportunity for invasion. Mitsu was consumed by guilt for his miscalculation that led to the general's death. The monkey, appearing out of nowhere, encouraged him to focus on strengthening the clan, claiming it was the only way to honor the general. Ikai and her younger brother stood before their father's memento. Their father had instructed them to give it to Nabu, but Ikai believed it was not the right time. The ceremony was about to begin, but Nabu was nowhere to be seen. The council was furious, blaming Nabu and demanding his brother to take charge. The younger brother, hesitant, looked to Ikai for guidance. She told him it was a decision he had to make on his own. With no other choice, the younger brother prepared to start the ceremony when Nabu burst in, wearing a shockingly unconventional outfit. The council members stared in disbelief. Without a word, Nabu walked towards a jar of ashes, flinging them into the air before disappearing. The council, incensed, demanded he be punished. But Nabu turned towards the elder's memorial, causing a whirlwind of cherry blossoms to ascend into the sky, creating a breathtaking spectacle to honor the fallen leader. After Nobu's departure, Mitsu declared that Nobu's actions were treasonous and had him imprisoned. He then handed over control of the clan to someone else, his intentions unknown. As dusk fell, Ikai visited the cherry blossom tree where her father used to tell her stories. The stories no longer held the same significance, but she hoped that Mitsu could help Nabu. She also yearned to give Nabu the memento his father had left behind, believing it would help him understand his father's heart. Mitsu promised to bring Nobu back soon. Jin, frustrated by Nabu's recent behavior, decided to leave the Oda clan. She believed a true king would never act so arrogantly. On the Mitsu Tower, Katsu had met with him, telling him that the council would hold a vote tomorrow. If Katsu were elected, he would be willing to accept the position. When everything was settled, he would personally return it to Nabu. However, Mitsu wondered what he would do about the war. Katsu hadn't thought about it yet, but he wanted to avoid war as much as possible so that the people could live in peace. That was his younger brother's wish. Hearing this, Mitsu could only wear a bored expression. As she was leaving, Vinsai offered to walk her part of the way. He suggested that Jean was leaving because of Nabu's recent behavior, but she brushed it off, saying that he wasn't the savior she had hoped for and there was no reason to stay. However, Vinsai urged her to draw one last card. This time, the card revealed a sign of strength, indicating a positive future. Jean, weary of Vinsai's prophetic pronouncements, sped off. Mitsu, sitting in his room, realized that Katsu, his younger brother, was unfit to be the head of the clan. Katsu's primary concern was for the welfare of the people, which was admirable, but in a time of war, such an approach would prove fatal. Only Nobu could lead the clan through this bloody hell. Mitsu decided to become the villain to restore order. Without hesitation, he grabbed a gun and went to assassinate his brother. He found Katsu gazing at the watch Nabu had given him, reinforcing his resolve. Mitsu fired, striking Katsu. Katsu, realizing who had shot him, smiled serenely, harboring no ill will. As he lay dying, he asked Mitsu to take care of his brother. Meanwhile, Jean, walking down the road, heard a scream from the distance. She rushed towards the sound and found Nabu, consumed by fury, venting his rage in a nearby stream. As she watched him, she saw an assassin aiming to kill him. She gasped, but before she could scream, the assassin fired. However, the bullet struck Himiko, who stood beside Nobu. As Himiko fainted, she whispered that she had fulfilled her duty as a wife. Jean, witnessing this act of self-sacrifice, could only marvel at the nature of love in a time of war. Nobu rushed Himiko back to find a physician. Jean followed closely behind. After a long period of treatment, Himiko thankfully recovered and was placed on bed rest. Nobu asked Mitsu to find the assassin, suspecting either the Tega clan or the Yuzugi clan, but Mitsu remained silent. Nobu insisted, sensing something amiss, and Mitsu finally confessed that his brother, Katsu, was dead. Overwhelmed by grief, Nobu blamed his own weakness for the loss of his father and brother. Mitsu, unable to speak, could only clench his jaw in silence. Nobu vowed to find the culprit and exact revenge. He was unaware that Mitsu was the one who had committed the act. Late into the night, Mitsu entered his brother's room and urged Ikiheim to rest, claiming he would watch over Katsu, but she refused, wanting to stay with her brother, at least for the night. Mitsu knelt before Katsu's body, vowing to sacrifice himself to help Nobu unite the land and bring peace to the people. Jean, burdened by the events, sought out Vinsai for solace, wanting to draw a card to understand what the future held. Vinsai, however, refused, believing it was not the right time for such a divination, given her unstable state. He urged her to conserve her strength for the battles to come. On the battlefield, Caesar was trying to form an alliance with the Tega clan. He was confident that the alliance was a sure thing, but Shin-Gen rejected the proposal, pointing out that Caesar had killed the enemy without permission, a betrayal of his potential allies. Shin-Gen felt Caesar was too untrustworthy and would likely stab them in the back. Caesar was furious at the rejection. Nobu held a council meeting, where the council members blamed Shin-Gen for the recent events. Nobu declared his intention to confront the Tega clan leader and force him to apologize for the deaths. The council urged Nobu to remain calm, arguing that war was not the right solution, but Nobu insisted that he would only use words. They boarded the Queen's ship and set sail towards the Tega clan's territory. Nobu was perplexed when he found that he could pilot the ship. It turned out that the women had been secretly teaching him. As they neared the battlefield, Nobu and his war armor descended. He was enjoying a snack when he noticed Jean in the cockpit. She was stretching when a stray bullet came flying toward her. Nobu leaped out of the cockpit, waving a white flag, and Jean, carrying a large trumpet, called for a meeting with the Tega clan leader. Shin-Gen sent soldiers to escort them. During the meeting, Shin-Gen revealed that he was not responsible for the assassination attempts. Nobu agreed, believing that Shin-Gen wouldn't stoop to such underhanded tactics. Their newfound mutual respect led to a toast, and they clinked cups, sealing their pact. Jean, witnessing this, was stunned. Shin-Jen, refusing to let Nabu leave empty-handed, offered him a drink and challenged him to a duel. Jin was bewildered. The two warriors entered the fray, engaged in a fierce and dazzling battle. Shin-Jen warned Nabu not to dwell on the past, as it was the nature of war. Nabu, however, remained focused on the present moment, enjoying the thrill of the duel. Impressed by Nabu's resilience, Shin-Jen combined his powers of fire and wind to create a whirlwind of flames aimed at Nabu, engulfing his war armor in fire. Nabu, however, was not easily defeated. He unleashed the full power of his war armor, summoning lightning bolts that struck the armor and ignited the nearby river, creating a thick fog that obscured the battlefield. The two warriors, now locked in close combat, clashed their spears, each seeking a decisive blow. Shin-Jen aimed his spear towards Nabu, but Nabu dodged and, with a swift kick, sent the spear flying into the ground. He charged forward and delivered a blow to Shin-Jen's war armor. The battle concluded, with Nabu emerging victorious. Defeated, Shin-Jen presented Nabu with the gem containing the power of fire, hoping that Nabu would unite the land in his stead. Nabu promised to fulfill Shin-Jen's dream. As Shin-Jen reached for the gem containing the power of wind, Caesar suddenly appeared, stabbing Shin-Jen in the back and ordering his men to seize the gem. Nabu, furious, was unable to stop him as his machine overloaded, forcing him to retreat. The one-eyed assassin, carrying Shin-Jen's war armor, spread lies, claiming to have witnessed Nabu stabbing Shin-Jen and fleeing. Caesar, rallying his forces, swore an oath to heaven, vowing to destroy the Oda clan to avenge Shin-Jen's death. His words fueled the soldiers' rage, turning them into a mob fueled by vengeance. After regaining the trust of the Takeda soldiers, causing the military advisors to willingly surrender their most valuable possessions to the one-eyed Caesar, Caesar was delighted to have almost stolen his wife. However, to be sure, he wouldn't target the Oda family at this time, but instead turned towards the Usugai region. After returning victorious, Nabu revealed the truth to everyone, that Shin-Jen was not the culprit behind his younger brother's death, but a group of people who took advantage of internal conflicts to cause the soldiers to slaughter each other. Therefore, now we need to maintain unity to repel the invaders. Himiko agreed and came over, encouraging everyone to forget the painful past and move forward. Therefore, Himiko would bring the Yamato army to assist the Oda family as much as possible. Nobu accepted that and asked her to rest more. Everything here was left to him. Afterwards, everyone went to the Mitsu workshop wondering who Caesar was and why he dared to be so arrogant. According to the old man, beside King Arthur were the Knights of the Round Table, those who swore loyalty to him, and the one-eyed Caesar was among them. They came here to learn about the origin of Eastern power. Those who mastered those magical currents could shake the world. More importantly, whoever had a strong will would make their armor even more dangerous. Seeing this, Nobu thought that Caesar was possessing the power of wind. If he activated it, it would be very dangerous. Therefore, he decided that tonight he would go to the one-eyed man's land to wreak havoc and get it back. Jean felt that she also had a gem that possessed similar power, but she didn't want to say it yet. Nobu asked his brothers to build a fake fortress to attract them. Everyone thought it was a good idea and decided to go ahead. On their way, Jean received a prophecy that Nabu would be killed by Caesar. She didn't want that to happen and wanted Nabu to stop this plan, but he was determined not to back down from this battle. Caesar was trying to unlock the power of the wind, but was struggling to activate it. It seemed that this power had been wholeheartedly entrusted to Nabu by Shin-Jen, so it had bonded with him. Changing his plan, he would attack to break that connection and take all of Nabu's power as well as steal his wife. After learning about the omen, Jean told Vinsai everything. The old man thought that the future could change, but it depended on how she perceived and acted, and spread out some cards for Jean to choose. The card she drew was the upright magic staff, implying that the magic staff would illuminate the dark path. By nightfall, the Takeda soldiers saw the finished fortress and reported it to the one-eyed man. Caesar ordered all the soldiers to attack directly and break it. Meanwhile, the queen's ship dropped Nabu's armor into a desolate land to create a one-on-one fight with Caesar. Seeing this, he was ready to engage. Before the solo began, the Takeda soldiers approached the castle, but found no soldiers. Furthermore, the fortress was just a reflection. Seizing the opportunity, the old man ordered the bombs to detonate, causing the enemy soldiers to almost disappear. Seeing himself tricked, the young man was enraged and activated his flying motorcycle to attack overwhelmingly, forcing Nabu to dodge awkwardly. Seeing the situation was not good, Nabu combined the powers of fire and lightning to create a similar flying motorcycle to fight back, making the guy high as a kite. They exchanged blows, but because Nabu was only controlling this machine for the first time, he took a bullet from behind and lay still. Finally, Jean saw what she didn't want to happen, and rushed to the battlefield, begging that she would trade her life for Nabu's, but Caesar didn't care, pushed her away, and delivered a finishing blow towards Nabu. At this point, Jean could only hold on tight and pray for the help of the gods. Responding to her wish, a spear appeared, helping Nabu to block the attack and push the one-eyed man away. Seeing that happen, Nabu realized it was the power of purity. The love Jean had for him had created a new form of absolute power. Caesar didn't believe it, so he poured all his power into a shot aimed at Nabu. However, the power of the spear reversed the attack, causing all the bullets the one-eyed man fired to fly back towards him. This caused the wind gem to fly towards Nabu. He received it and combined all three powers together. With the power of lightning, fire, and wind, Nabu unleashed an attack on Caesar, sending him flying away from the battle. With that victory, the old man said that Nabu had surpassed his expectations and wondered how much further he would go. The battle ended with the Oda family victorious, lifting the spirits of the people. The old man, witnessing Jean's display of power, gathered up the scraps of armor to craft a complete suit for her, focusing on defensive abilities. Caesar, defeated, went to the Usugai family. Seeing the destructive power of one-eyed Kenshin, he proposed an alliance with the Usugai family. The outcome remains unclear. Suddenly, Mitsu woke up from a nightmare. He'd been having these nightmares ever since he attacked his younger brother, but he didn't let fear paralyze him, reminding himself it was necessary. He had no regrets. Meanwhile, at the fortress, the female engineer was installing the most advanced sound system for a verbal showdown with the enemy. While discussing the speaker's capabilities, she caught a strange scent Himiko was cooking. Was she trying to poison Nabu with some kind of enemy food? After finishing her cooking, she went to find him, but couldn't find him. Finally, she encountered Jean, who explained Nabu was adjusting his machine. Himiko, seeing Jean's growing feelings for Nabu, teased her, suggesting she would lure him into her armor for something improper. This led to another verbal sparring match between the two. Jean, trying to adapt to the armor, stumbled as soon as she stepped outside. Nabu rushed to help her. This scene made the gorilla jealous. The Knights of the Round Table heard whispers of a girl from the east with prophetic powers. They considered Caesar useless, but that didn't matter. They needed to gather all 12 powers to create the Holy Grail, which could save humanity from the brink of death. Jean, struggling to unleash her spiritual powers, frustrated the old man, who wondered if the armor was malfunctioning. Disheartened, she was kicked by Nabu, who told her to release her internal anxieties and become one with the armor to activate its powers. While discussing the armor, someone arrived to report that Caesar had formed an alliance with the Usugai family. People panicked, fearing the Oda family's imminent demise. After solidifying their alliance, Chief Kenshin still disliked Caesar, sensing he was hiding something. He was certain it wouldn't be good for the Usugai family. The military advisors heard the news and decided to do something to change the Oda family's fate. After a spy reported the advisors' plans, Mitsu was forced to once again make a decision to become a demon again. However, his hand resisted the command. At that moment, Princess Ikai entered. She noticed the sadness in Mitsu's face, noticing it had been there lately. She tried to comfort him, but got hurt by his past actions and was sent away. Jean, discouraged by her inability to activate the armor, was comforted by the old man. He told her to draw a card if she had any doubts about herself. She drew the reversed moon card, implying she should move forward without hesitation. She still didn't understand, so the old man gave her some hints. Understanding, she ran to Nabu for help. After both of them got into the armor, Nabu aimed his bow and arrow at Jean, causing her to fear and dodge. Vinsai suggested that the activation condition was a near-death experience, and Jean needed to overcome that fear. The advisors held another meeting, wanting to persuade Nabu to reconcile with Caesar by sending the chief and advisors to apologize and negotiate conditions. This would save the Oda family's reputation and prevent further casualties. Mitsu was furious, calling them crazy. Nabu was trying to make Jean remember the things worth protecting, making her understand what he meant. She asked him to shoot another arrow. This time, Jean activated her powers and blocked the attack, making Nabu satisfied. He took her to meet the advisors. Standing before them, he asked if they wanted to lose their freedom and courage. Did any lord accept their people living in such humiliation? If they felt guilty for their past actions, they should turn themselves into swords to cut through that guilt and become an example for future generations. The old man, impressed by the speech, recorded it and played it for the people. After listening, all the people and soldiers agreed with Nabu and vowed to fight alongside their new chief. The princess finally felt it was the right time to give Nabu the heirloom left by his father, making him the new leader of the Oda family. There was a place of intersection between the east and west, called the trading zone. It was used to transport armor from the west, but it was very difficult for eastern people to reach. The trading zone was high up in the sky, beyond the clouds. The Knights of the Round Table were furious with Caesar. After his defeat, he had asked for another armor to deal with Nabu. They reluctantly agreed but warned him that if he failed again, they would cut off his, well, you know. The Oda family, with Nabu as their leader, was united. With their military strength bolstered and the support of Queen Himiko, they forged an alliance with neighboring countries to face Caesar and the Usugai family. Hearing about the Oda family's preparations, the one-eyed Caesar wondered why Kenshin wasn't engaging in a skill-based duel. However, the Usugai family only sought an alliance with him in name. If war erupted between all the families, Kenshin would crush them all. He didn't care what Caesar did. Nabu was training with the gorilla, inspiring Ikai to dream of achieving great things like her brother. During the training, Nabu shattered the gorilla's sword, but the gorilla, refusing to give up, picked up the broken pieces and fought back like a wild animal. Unexpectedly, the gorilla managed to defeat Nabu. Mitsu rushed in, announcing that Himiko had something to tell everyone. Based on information gathered by the Yamato family, she revealed that the West was sending a massive armor to aid Caesar. Despite the news, Mitsu remained confident, as he had prepared a plan in advance. The gorilla, looking at a machine in the workshop, wondered when he would get his own armor. Understanding his thoughts, Vinsai asked him to draw a card. The card he drew was the upright temperance, but its meaning remained unclear. The one-eyed Caesar was enjoying his snack when someone reported that Nobu's army was preparing for battle. He considered the massive armor that hid behind the soldiers cowardly and ordered his troops to flank them while waiting for the new armor to arrive. Mitsu, however, had anticipated this. He used Nabu's massive armor as bait. Meanwhile, everyone gathered at the trading zone, planning to steal the armor being sent from the west. Before the battle commenced, they carefully discussed their plan. The old man explained that reaching the trading zone would be easy because they had Queen Himiko's ship. However, stealing the armor would be much harder. The magic flow up there was weak, making it impossible to activate the armor. To overcome this, Vinsai had prepared something that could reverse the flow of magic. All they needed was to place these devices around the trading zone, and they could activate the armor easily. The devices were successfully placed. The gorilla invited Jean to eat with him. She wondered why he was eating at this critical moment. He didn't hide the truth. He had a younger sister who died from famine and illness during the war. She was the most important person in his life. He ate to make up for the meals he couldn't share with her. He joined the army to seek revenge, but after meeting Nabu, he changed and swore to help him unify the land. The soldiers detected intruders and Nabu promptly eliminated them. The crew decided to stop the shipment, but Mitsu's electric armor had already been successfully installed, forcing the ship to land on the ambush route. Without hesitation, the captain landed the ship. From a distance, the gorilla detonated a bomb, triggering a chain reaction that activated the devices, generating a powerful magical current and lifting the Queen's ship into the air. At a certain height, the armors jumped down and surrounded the transport ships. Things weren't as easy as they seemed. Caesar had sent a captain along to counter this plan. He used his armor to slash through the surrounding soldiers. Unable to watch his comrades fall, the gorilla decided to do something bold. He jumped onto the armor. After struggling for a while, he finally activated it and charged into battle with the captain. However, since he was only controlling this armor for the first time, he was no match for the captain. Nabu saw this and charged in to help. He fired an arrow at the captain's legs. The captain, realizing the danger, knocked Nabu away. The gorilla charged in to block the attack, protecting Nabu. Nabu had known for a long time that the gorilla had a desire to avenge his sister's death against the Oda family. But with his current strength, the gorilla was too weak to do that. While he was distracted by this thought, the captain slashed him and sent him flying into the abyss. It seemed like the end for the gorilla, but Nabu jumped down after him. He fired an arrow containing a wind gem towards the gorilla, hoping he could create a miracle and do what he desired. The gorilla didn't disappoint Nabu. He activated the wind gem, creating a cloud that lifted both him and Nabu back into the battle. The old man exclaimed, "Is that the legendary cloud?" With his wild fighting style, the gorilla managed to defeat the captain and the rest of the troops retreated. After successfully executing their strategy, the Oda army began to withdraw. Caesar discovered he had been tricked, but this time, the one-eyed man wasn't furious. He had matured, he believed. The gorilla was ecstatic looking at his new armor, but Mitsu urged him to calm down. There was much to be done. Having gained a new armor that could utilize the power of wind, many neighboring countries sought alliances with Nabu. The Oda family was in a new position of power, now able to make decisions about the war. However, Nabu worried that Caesar would come for them soon. If he were Caesar, he'd crush them before they could fully master the armors. Mitsu had evacuated the people to the city to avoid the dangers of war. Jean confidently declared that she alone could protect the people from Caesar's attack. Nabu argued that she alone was not enough, as she lacked combat experience. While they bickered, the old man suggested that Nabu draw a card to see what might happen, but Jean quickly drew first. The card she drew symbolized beginnings and endings, a potential omen. The old man warned that they needed to address the weakness of the armor when combined with magic. Overusing the armor could leave the user exhausted, as if they had returned from death. They needed to act cautiously. Caesar had begun his offensive, attacking surrounding lands to encircle the Oda family. The tide seemed to be turning in Caesar's favor, prompting Nabu to declare that Caesar knew how to utilize his army's strength, and he would respond in kind. The battle began with Caesar firing cannons at the fortress, trying to lure Nabu out. Nabu, accompanied by the gorilla and Jean, responded, fulfilling their roles. The battle ended as dusk fell, forcing them to constantly cool down the armors. Everyone gathered in the meeting room to discuss strategy. Mitsu believed that the battle was a trap, meant to exhaust their armors so that when Caesar attacked the next morning, they would be at a disadvantage. However, a more critical issue was Caesar's spear. It possessed immense destructive power. Mitsu and the old man had figured out that using the spear required a lot of energy, leaving Caesar vulnerable. If Jean could block his attack, Nabu and the gorilla could charge in and overwhelm him before he could regain his power. Queen Himiko would be crucial to this plan. The sun rose, and Nabu and his companions were ready. The battle began with fierce fighting on both sides. Caesar charged at Nabu, seeking revenge for his earlier defeats. The battle unfolded as Mitsu had predicted. Caesar fired at Nabu, giving Jean the perfect moment to step in and block the attack. Seizing the opportunity, Nabu and the gorilla charged in to attack. Caesar tried to fire again, but his energy recharge was slower, thanks to the Queen's ship draining the magical flow. It seemed the battle was over, but Caesar refused to surrender. He refused to believe that he would be defeated by Eastern powers. Fueled by this faith, he flung Nabu aside, creating a huge cannon and unleashing all his frustration and rage upon Nabu and his friends. Worse, the power was so great it spread everywhere from the battlefield to the city, and even the people. Even Caesar couldn't handle the power and was flung away. Seeing the destruction, Jean wondered if this was the omen from the card. Was it all her fault for drawing it? Nabu ran to her and comforted her. Caesar walked over and declared victory. Nabu mocked him, asking if even he knew how to show mercy. Caesar, defending himself, said he didn't like killing women. He was a real clown. The one-eyed Caesar even suggested that Nabu surrender, but Nabu refused to give up. He invited Caesar to a tea party to settle the feud between them.